Welcome to the fourth branch program. Glad you can make it. I am MD. This program is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Stay tuned as we begin the discussion of a very important, interesting, and enlightening topic. Hope to hear from you soon. Happy listening. Abraham Lincoln said, "You can fool all the people some of the time, some of the people all of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time." The administration of Donald Trump became possible based exclusively on lies and deception. The very day that Donald Trump set foot in the political arena, he has used lies as a tool to bully people around and to get him all the way to the Oval Office. It is impossible to know whether it was a strategy or simply an illness which requires attention of very famous experts. But one thing is certain: to lie to millions of people, keep them in ignorance. Democracy relies almost exclusively on knowledge, on the truth. In fact, it is said that the level of ignorance of a people is the most accurate gauge which determines the strength of democracy in that country. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Ignorance is the tool used by authoritarians, by dictators, to control their people. Ignorance is the biggest threat to any democracy. It is, however, the ignorance of the ignorance which represents the greatest danger to society. It is what turns an ignorant man into a lunatic. Thus lies the danger, the peril even of a man, a community, a state, a country, yes, even a society. John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, said that the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of us all. Indeed, it does. We've seen it, have we not? We've witnessed it. We are all living it, are we not? All men are born ignorant. Many have chosen to stay and live in ignorance. Only a few recognize ignorance is indeed the root and stem of all evil and choose to be ignorant no more. Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the Fourth Branch program. First, a warning. This program is not suitable for all audiences. I repeat, the content of this program is not for everyone. To find out if it's suitable to you, answer the following two questions. Question 1. Would you entrust your teenage daughter to a non-rapist? Question 2. Would you have a non-pedophile cared for your toddler? Once again, question 1. Would you entrust your teenage daughter to a non-rapist? Question 2. Would you have a non-pedophile cared for your toddler? Your time is up, obviously. If you had difficulty answering either question, this program is not for you. If you answer yes to either or to both questions, this program is definitely not for you. But if both of your answers are absolutely not, this program is catered exclusively to you. You should stick around. It is enlightening, educational, and informative. Join me here on the Fourth Branch at 10:30 a.m. every Saturday. And every weekday at 2 p.m. This is the Fourth Branch.
Common sense in a world of chaos.
This program will resume in just a moment. everyone, I am MD and this is the fourth branch program. Today we continue the conversation about how our democracy is in serious jeopardy, and in part 2 we will discuss war on blacks, a topic we have started a week or so ago, and both of those topics are of critical importance, extreme importance for the whole country. Alexander Hamilton said, if you do not stand for something, you will fall for anything. It is expected that constituents would not necessarily know for sure what's good for them. In other words, they may not have the big picture, so to speak. But we constituents, we know at the very least what we want. We want freedom. We want democracy. The framers of the Constitution, despite having lived in an era where people were patriotic, and there was a lot of pride to belong to a new government which cut all relation with the motherland, where there was really no rule, no law, because one individual, the king or the queen, decided who lives, who dies, and it didn't matter whether the queen or the king was wrong. Now they built a country which has a form of government which guarantees that everyone who lives in this country, every citizen, every resident of the country enjoys freedom to move about, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and they also enjoy the opportunity to elect or remove officials, governors, mayors, president, congressmen, senators. In other words, a country in which the resident of that country decide his or her fate. Despite what the country has gone through, at the very least, there are the two pillars of our system of government which have survived and which makes today that resident of the United States can speak freely, and resident of the United States can go to the ballot box and decide who to vote for, and thus elect or remove elected officials. Because we grew up in this environment, we take everything that I just said for granted. Kids, grandkids, even generation before me and generation before that generation takes those things for granted because don't know any better. It's standard. If you wake up every day, before you leave, you sit at the table and you eat breakfast, because your breakfast is always there waiting for you, and you eat and you walk to school or to work, the day that you would wake up under a different circumstance where you don't see any food on the table. But much worse, if you open the fridge, you don't see anything to prepare food. But even worse, if you find there is no money in your wallet, you don't have any ATM card to go and withdraw money, and you can say on your way out you'll buy something, I can almost guarantee you your life will be miserable, turned upside down, because it is shocking to wake up and find that all that you took for granted, they all disappear. Now, that scenario can easily be arranged, can drop you someplace where everything that you need, you have to struggle for, to work for. It will most likely be temporary as well, because as soon as you can get yourself out of that predicament, then things will change, may even go back to the previous life, to normal. We enjoy the freedom to move about, to say whatever we have in our mind. In fact, based on what the kind of conversation we've been having the past 2 years clearly tells us, it's something that we should work hard to preserve. Those who don't like a president, and we're not talking about just the past 2 years, the past few decades. In fact, since the existence of the Republic, you always have a party that doesn't like what the current administration is doing and criticize the current administration until, of course, the next administration, in which case now the criticism changes hands. When it's a Democrat in power, Republican goes berserk. They criticize everything that the administration does is bad. If you remember, during the Obama administration, if you go into the Republican world, you would think that the country is being burned down, because there was absolutely, in fact, if you tune into Fox, there was absolutely nothing that was being done that was good. Today, the tune has changed. Everything that you're hearing that being done by the Trump administration, if you tune into network that may not necessarily like Trump, it is a freedom to have. Now, there is one very major difference between those two examples. Of all past administration, everybody on the other side always free to criticize. And that's, politicians understand that, and they, quote unquote, roll with it until Donald Trump. If it were up to Donald Trump, freedom of press, of the media, would have ended. Of course, he could not possibly do it without really some major pushback and revolution, even if he were to want to go that far, but he did try. He even had conversation with his attorney general to figure out a way to jail those people, those journalists who are writing unflattering article about him. This is what a dictator does. So it is a different world. So there is the regular criticism that we talk about, and now is something very different. because the current administration want to completely remove what we Americans have enjoyed for over 2 centuries. Walter Cronkite says that we need journalism. Democracy needs journalism. Without journalism in a country, and watch any country that suppress, that oppresses the freedom of speech, that prevent journalists to speak. Look at what Saudi Arabia just did to Jamal Khashoggi. They kill him, they cut him in pieces because he wrote unflattering article about the prince, the Saudi princes. In case you don't know what that means, if journalists cannot expose public official, the public cannot criticize public official. There is no place to turn. There is nowhere to turn. In other words, there is no democracy in that country, no matter what you hear. What preserves democracy in any country is the freedom to speak. And journalists, good, bad, flawed, biased, they serve a purpose in that country. There is no denying that, despite the fact that you hear from time to time that, well, often I go after Fox because Fox doesn't do those kind of things. Fox is a propaganda machine that calls itself news, put the label news behind it, but Fox is just that, a propaganda machine. We have hope that at some point there will be someone who will become responsible for Fox and will turn it into a real news organization. But as it stands today, it is not. So Fox is not helping the cause. So what the difference between this administration, Donald Trump, and all previous administration is the fact that Donald Trump has worked to erode our democracy. And that's something also that was done by someone we know of, who lived before Donald Trump, 80 years of before Donald Trump, that Adolf Hitler. And that's exactly what Adolf Hitler did in Germany when he was Chancellor of Germany. Any elected official who goes after the media and try to silence the media, the people of the country, no matter which political party you belong to, should forget political party, should forget your party and stand and prevent that government to continue to harass the media. No matter how much you too may have not liked the media. You know what true freedom is? True freedom is when we, meaning you, fight for the rights of even those you disagree with. That is what true freedom is. And that's what preserves democracy in a country. Because once you start having a group that's siding with the government, that's trying to strip democracy from another group, that's the end of democracy. There is no such thing that you side with the government because the government is against that group and then you think everything is going to be okay. It's not. When Adolf Hitler took hold of Germany after being appointed Chancellor of Germany, Adolf Hitler had the most popularity than every previous king or queen in Germany. Even Paul von Hindenburg, he was actually president of Germany at some point, and he had the popularity never before. And that was the only person that matches Adolf Hitler popularity. Men, women, children, old, young, everybody cheered Adolf Hitler. That's before he became that monster. I said that so that you can understand that our democracy is in jeopardy whenever there is a group of people who are ignorant enough to think it's okay to support a government who is adamant about stripping freedom from journalism, from journalists. It never worked well. Adolf Hitler labeled the media of fabrication. Donald Trump labeled the media of fake news. With his popularity, Adolf Hitler that is, with his popularity, he was able to suppress the media. You know what he was capable of doing? Anything that had to go in print has to be censored. His office, the Chancellor office, had to look whatever is going to go to print and give the green light or not. A few months ago, 40% of the people who support Donald Trump say they would support Donald Trump having the power to control the media. Those people, during the presidential race, there were conversation about the individual who support Donald Trump as being ill-educated, non-educated. Of course, when the media found that there were quite a few people who actually went to college also supporting Donald Trump, they backed away from calling people who support Donald Trump non-educated. Personally, I never did back out of that because I know that we have also what I call ignorant with college degree. And it proves beyond reasonable doubt that's really what those individuals are. Now, why is it important? It's because having a college degree and not able to see very clearly that you have someone who is stripping away the most important aspect of your life, the freedom, the democracy that you enjoy, there is no smart there. No one can call himself or herself smart if you cannot fight that very basic principle of life. I don't care if an individual has a PhD, but if you cannot stand against a government that's stripping away your freedom, how smart are you? Now, here's the best test that I have for individuals who still believe that they are smart by supporting the type of thing that Donald Trump is doing. Caroline Kennedy said that what really makes our democracy work is the rule of law. what makes our democracy work is the rule of law. Without the rule of law, there is no democracy. The bedrock of our democracy is the rule of law. Hugh Grant said that a free press is the cornerstone of democracy. To keep millions of people in ignorance, to lie to millions of people, is to keep them in ignorance, which prevents democracy from flourishing. Now, I don't know if it is a strategy that the Republican Party as a whole has been in a campaign of lying to the constituent. They have become master of deception. I don't know if it's a strategy, but it serves one purpose and one purpose only, is to keep them in ignorance. You want to know the biggest obstacle to our democracy is ignorance. That's also the best weapon for dictators, for authoritarian. They keep the people in ignorance. Now, you may argue all you want that if you are still a huge supporter of Donald Trump, it doesn't matter whether you have a PhD or not, you also fall into the category of ignorant. And the reason is because what Donald Trump does, what he has been doing for the past 2 years, he has been eroding our democracy. He has attacked journalism, freedom of the media. Now, I don't care whether you like the media or not, because it's totally irrelevant. Without the media, we don't have democracy without the media. It's the media that exposes corruption, that exposes elected officials who go out of line. No matter how much you like or dislike the media, that's their job to do. And if that stops, there is no democracy. Now, imagine for a moment that the government now has control of the media. What do you think happens when you have a problem? Who do you go to? Who do you turn to? There would be no media because the government controls the media. And interestingly enough, those very smart individuals who want to flaunt their college degree and to tell the world that we support Donald Trump, we're not ignorant, we're not stupid. It would have been better not to even point that out, because it's actually sad to even think that someone would have gone to college and still able to justify supporting a man who has been from the very beginning trying to destroy the very thing that we cherish, our freedom, our democracy. It's like someone handing a knife for another individual to stab him or her. That cannot be smart. Or someone who hands a sharper knife to an individual who wants to stab you. How smart is that? Now, all that is sad enough, but what is even baffling is to have the legislators, members of the legislative branch, Republican members of the legislative branch, doing exactly the same thing. Because those people, we elected those people to make our lives better, to help strengthen the union, to help preserve our institution. And they are the one behind the idea of trying to weaken those institutions. You know, the very institution that make America the envy of the world, Republican legislators for the past 2 years have shown display, they have put in display, not something we're talking about that you haven't seen. They have been in full display, showing that they are working to weaken our democracy, to destroy the very institution which have made America the envy of the world. You cannot reconcile being smart, being educated, and being at the same time a supporter of someone who is destroying the very thing that you cherish. That doesn't jive. It's impossible to reconcile those two things. If I threaten to stab you with a knife and you hand me a sharper knife, this is not smart. I don't care whether you have a diploma, your PhD diploma hung in your wall, and large as the size of the wall, to show that you are smart. This is not smart, because people from the world over yearn for the freedom that we in the United States have and enjoy. So it is very difficult for me to envision a smart individual literally working to support the government that doesn't just propose to, but work towards destroying that very important part of our lives, our democracy. This is impossible to understand. This is not smart. There is no word for a behavior like this. Someone comes walking towards you with a knife to stab you, and you hand the person a sharper knife. There is nothing smart about that. Ron Paul, who is the Rand Paul father. Rand Paul is currently is a senator from Kentucky. Ron Paul, who is his father, he ran for president a few years back. He said that true patriotism requires that you challenge your government when it is wrong. That's what patriotism is. Putting your hand in your chest, on your chest during national anthem is not patriotism. It's just a symbol. You just stand and do that. There is nothing patriotic about it. It's the same thing at church. Some people kneel to pray, some people stand to pray. Neither the person who kneel or the person who stand, there is no difference. The person who kneel is not more sanctified than the person who stand. Those are just symbol behavior. You feel more comfortable standing, you stand. You feel more comfortable kneeling, you kneel. So putting your hand on your chest during national anthem doesn't make you a patriot. True patriotism requires that you challenge the government when it is wrong. The government, the administration, the Trump administration is wrong to erode our democracy, our freedom, to go after the media. And if you cannot think or realize that your very freedom, the freedom of the future generation, your children, your grandchildren, is at stake. Because when a government, when an administration start doing that, it doesn't stop. Yes, the Trump administration will go away at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later, but when it starts, it will continue, and gradually you will lose that very thing that you enjoy, which is our democracy. Now, you may not think about this, but this is too important. This is what attracts people from the world over. Those things that they know we have the rule of law, that everybody is subjected to that. We have the freedom to speak. Those are attractive factors of our democracy that makes people from the world over want to come to America. And today, the Trump administration has done a lot of damage to that. He has, from day one, has worked, and he has done a lot of damage. But what even more baffling is the fact that Republican legislators have gone along with it. That put our democracy in serious jeopardy. When people talk about Adolf Hitler, they always think Adolf Hitler was a monster when he started. He was not. Ignorance is the biggest threat to any democracy.
In 1996, a small network by the name of Fox News was launched with just 17 million viewers. Today, with over 100 million people watching regularly, Fox has become the greatest threat to our democracy, constantly bombarding the airwaves with false information, distortion of facts, and outright lies, presenting to its audience as news. Fox has created an army of blissful ignorance. According to a recent survey, 82% of Fox viewers are ignorant of facts and the truth. To keep millions of people in ignorance not only prevents democracy from flourishing, but it also clears the path to authoritarianism, to dictatorship. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Let me finish by saying that democracy cannot survive in an environment where truth and facts do not matter. At Fox, truth and facts do not matter. Indeed, democracy in America is in jeopardy. It is a crisis the country can no longer ignore.
War on blacks. Race relations are very complex. Nothing is black and white. So it is not a surprise that conversation about related to race are so difficult. Nobody wants to talk about it. It has this level of emotional aspect of it that blacks are very emotional about talking about race for good reason. They have lived through racism, discrimination every day, everywhere, every aspect. They've experienced it regularly. They've witnessed it frequently. They even become victims of such. The whites, on the other hand, are much less concerned, also for good reason. Well, that's beginning to change. Actually, those changes have been ongoing at the very least for the past few years. But nevertheless, the predicament doesn't impact them directly. So they ignore it, they shrug it off, they condone it, they nurture it, and some even normalize it. Now, when we began that conversation, we said that it is difficult to talk about race relation, racism, discrimination because of that. There is plenty of racism and discrimination in the United States. Unfortunately. But as mentioned prior, there are millions of whites who are racist and who discriminate. And we're not talking about the white nationalists or the KKK. This is a very small group. If it were to be just those people, the country wouldn't have that problem. There are also millions of whites who are not racist and who do not discriminate. Thus, the discussion about race relation in America is very difficult. But that doesn't mean we should not talk about it. In fact, that's a very problem because it's a black box where nobody wants to talk about. And as such, every time something happens that's tragic, well, we have to talk about race relation because, well, there is a lack of understanding in the country about race. Well, we don't talk about it until something bad happens. We say, let's talk about it. And then for a couple of days, that's said all over the place. And then we don't talk about it until the next tragedy happens. War on Blacks, this program, serves this purpose. It's not always true that you will hear me try to make the distinction between the whites who are racist, who discriminate, and those who are not. But that's the basis of this conversation in order to outline the problem that we have in the country. Racism, discrimination, prejudice. One, we have to acknowledge that those factors, those problems do exist. And two, we have to understand the roots of those problems. And until we do, we cannot solve or eradicate or even minimize the problem. And that's what this program, War on Blacks, is for. So, for those who are saying there is no war on blacks, we already addressed that, but we will address it again. Today, the topic is slave trades, and we will continue the conversation about slave trades. And the purpose is not to teach anyone about slavery, but rather to follow the path which lead us to where we are today. And we would never be able to really talk at length enough about slavery, and we have no intention of doing so. We're just skirting the topic to explain racism and discrimination in the United States, why those problems linger and still exist. Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on Blacks is a new topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relations in America. The goal is threefold. One, to bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discriminations, and racism in the country. Two, to expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. Three, to extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussions of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then, will we, as a society, be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Abraham Joshua Heschel exclaimed, "Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason." Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you. There are two statements that I made, and I would like to, as much as humanly possible, to continue to make those statements so that for individuals who do not have the opportunity to have followed this program all along, don't walk away with lack of context because I do believe that there is a lack of context based on on a few comments that I got. One, I made it clear, and I will say it again, that we acknowledge that there are two groups, major groups in the country, major group of whites. The group, there are millions of whites who are racist, who discriminate. There is no if and but about it. And there are also millions of whites who are not racist, who do not discriminate. And that makes the race relation in America a big issue. Now, as we go through this program, you will find out exactly the group, the group of whites who discriminate, what causes that? Why do we have such a big divide between these two groups? And you'll see how logical it is that we have that. And I am fairly confident is the level of ignorance on the part of those who discriminate. The ignorance is behind that. But in war on blacks, the expression itself is used because it's not used for slogan, it's not used for propaganda, it's not used for sensationalism. It is used to express exactly the idea behind what's going on with blacks. War suggests fight, suggests casualties, and that's exactly what that means. There has been war waging on blacks, and there has been casualties piling up over the years. So we mean to call this program War on Black. This is not a misnomer. And for those who continue to say there is no war on black, yes, there is war on black. It's taken so many different forms. And as we continue the conversation, you'll see that in every aspect of a black life, even those people who actually have made it in life, millionaires and billionaires, they still go, of course, different type of struggle, but they still go through the same struggle that blacks have. They go through the same type of casualty that most blacks do go through. Anyway, today we're talking about slave trade. I did mention that there is no such thing as good master or good slave owner, because there is this disconnect between this generation or even the previous one and those who preceded them. For instance, if your ancestors, keep that in mind, that's very important. If your ancestor, you're white, and your ancestors were here in the United States before the emancipation, which means before slavery ended, you indirectly are also part of the problem. Yes, I know you weren't there when slavery was around. You weren't there when they were trading slaves, when they were doing all those bad things to slaves. I understand all that. But the reason you are part of the problem, now for whites who come to the state afterward, that may fall under a different umbrella, a different category. Understood. And they may even belong to a different group than those two groups that I just mentioned, because they may behave a different way because of different experiences that they have. But for those white individuals whose ancestors were already established here in America,
before slavery and during slavery, you are indirectly part of the issue. And by indirectly part of the issue, mean that stories were passed from generation to generation to generation to you. And you harbor sentiment which is, I can say almost with 100% of certainty, which is negative towards black. Because those stories that pass from great grandpa, your ancestors, all the way down to you, those are not good stories. They bad stories about blacks. But those stories also paint your ancestors, great grandpa, as he was a slave owner, but he was a good, decent man. He treated people right. And keep in mind, that's a lie and 100% false. There was never any such thing as good slave owner or good slave master. And you'll see why I say that. Not because I want to say it for the sake of saying it, but because it is true. Your ancestor, whoever that was, great grandpa, as I mentioned before, maybe a decent man, loves his family, cares for his family, loves his wife, loves his children, loves his grandchildren. All that is probably true. But the picture that they paint of him as a good slave master or a good slave owner is 100% false. Because the word slave owner, slave master doesn't go along with good, with the attribute good. And you'll see why. Tomorrow at 10:30 a.m., which is when we have this program next, we will spend the majority of the time. Actually, we'll dedicate the program exclusively for that, because we may not be able to end the slave trade program, but we'd like to make a good progress on that part of the war on blacks aspect, so that we can move the process forward. The idea of a good slave owner cannot even be created and perceived by Hollywood, let alone. And there is a reason for that. Now, if you in business, I'm going to suggest, for instance, you have a supermarket, or even a mom and pop store, a grocery store, whatever you have, but the idea would still stay the same. And you purchase product to resell. You buy wholesale, maybe, and you're gonna sell to individual customers. Now you have all your products there, and as a store owner, as a business owner, you're expecting to make a profit. We know, without going through details of unscrupulous business owners, you watch over your business and you want every penny of profit. You want to enjoy every penny of profit. Now, rightfully so, because that's what you have a business for. People don't go into business just for the sake. They go because they have an objective. If you buy this bottle of water for 99 cents, you go and sell it retail maybe for 120. Now, if you imagine that every time people come to your store, they take a bottle of water and they walk without paying, you will not be in business for long. That's why you may have heard of stories where a business owner would actually shoot someone who come to the store and steal a bag of potato chip. And the individual would lose his life over a bag of potato chip. Now, the example is simply to put the light on the fact that that business owner is so protective of the business, so protective of making a profit, that is willing to take someone's life to protect that business. And we're talking about today, not 300 years ago. We're talking about today. When it is much easier to replace things, to make up for the losses, and so on. And yet, as a business owner, you see that you would resort to lethal force in order to make certain that your product doesn't walk from the store. Now, that's a different issue, which we're not debating here, but you get the picture that you protect your business at all costs. Now, during slavery time, those type of flyers were very common. Flyers that passed to white communities, different places where they gather, churches, and so on. And those flyers, to alert them of sales of Negroes, what we call trade slaves. But those could be local, could be domestic, or it could be because a shipment of Negroes was coming. As you can see in that particular flyer, they tell you that a cargo of 94 prime healthy Negroes. They sold it as merchandise, consisting of 39 men, 15 boys, 24 women, and 16 girls. Merchandise. that would be considered slave trade. Those individuals would go to Africa with their rifle, hunt down black people who did not have the luxury of a rifle themselves. And if they get cornered, they capture them, chain them, put them on a boat in very inhuman conditions, travel miles, thousands of miles with them. Those who survives now were put for sales. That's what we know of as slave trades. Now, there is some of that happened domestically. For instance, a white individual who has the financial ability may purchase 50 Negroes, but he may not have any need for 50 Negroes. So he would, for instance, let's say he only need 10 Negroes. So he would sell the other 40 Negroes. But he would do that just like in any business transaction, knowing that shipment, especially in the beginning, shipment weren't coming as frequently or as quickly, and whites who may not need 50 or 70 or 100, who may only have a need for 3, 4, or 5, then those wholesalers would have purchased 50 or more and then would retail those Negroes and make a profit, of course. And those flyers were how they communicate sales, whether it was domestic sales or, should we say, international sales. Because when a boat was coming with plenty of Negroes, they come and dump their merchandise here. And of course, they dump merchandise elsewhere as well, Europe and so on. So the same principle, they go to Africa, hunt blacks, capture them, put them in chain, torture them, beat them, and then travel with them all the way to America to sell them as merchandise. That was what they call slave trades. But that's, believe it or not, that's a good side of it. Yes, you might ask, what's good about slave trades? Well, relatively speaking, despite what I just mentioned, that they were hunted, literally hunted like animals. And we see that today that a number of people are standing up, animal rights activists are standing up to people who go to Africa and hunting what we call endangered species. And some countries sometimes they would get arrested, they would get penalized, fined, and banned from coming back to the country and hunt those endangered species. During the colonial period, whites used to go to Africa and hunt black like animals and capture them and chain them, and those that they could not capture, they would just shoot down. And I said that was the best or the least horrific part of the whole ordeal. Get chained, rounded up, put in a boat, jam-packed like sardine, one on top of the other, for a journey that's going to last weeks. Yes, it was not a pretty picture, and yet that was not as horrific as the rest of the story about the war on blacks. Now, I don't know what you would call that. That you have people in their country, they not doing anything that bothered anybody, and now you have a group of hunters with rifle running after them to capture them and kill them if unable to capture them. What would you call that? War on blacks did not start yesterday. It had started a long time ago. I'll be right back. Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on blacks is a new topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relations in America. The goal is threefold. 1. To bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discriminations, and racism in the country. 2. To expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. 3. To extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussions of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then, will we, as a society, be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Abraham Joshua Heschel exclaimed, "Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason." Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you. I do thank you for taking the time to listen to this program. It is as important to the country as it is to us, because race relation in America has suffered a series of setbacks. I do invite you to the program tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. In the meantime, if you have questions, comment, criticism, do not hesitate to contact us. We'd like to do better. We'd like to improve what we're doing, how we're doing it. And if you have any need for any other topic that of interest to you, you would like us to research and talk about it as well, do not hesitate to contact us, because the goal, as mentioned, is to work towards a more perfect union, and that can only be achieved by removing the biggest obstacle, which is ignorance. So please do not hesitate to contact us. We would like to hear from you. Now, if you do have suggestions that can help improve the program, we're also open to that. If you have criticism, we do accept them as well, as long as that can help us improve the program. But if your wish is for this program to end, we're terribly sorry, that's not going to happen. The goal is to make certain that everybody who has the opportunity to listen to this program can understand where this problem comes from and make the decision to help remedy the situation. If you want to listen to previous episode of this program, you can find it on the People Branch YouTube channel. That's People Branch YouTube channel, where all of our programs are archived, and you more than welcome to take a listen. Put some time aside. They're a long video because they have plenty of detail. Until next time, I hope to see you again at 10:30 a.m. tomorrow morning, during which time we will dedicate the whole program to the war on blacks. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events, as well as to understand topics of legislations. The Fourth Branch Project is not associated with any political party, and we at the Fourth Branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Join me on our next social media broadcast. See you then. The Fourth Branch podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.